So it's 7 o'clock, so we are going to begin the class. I don't want to keep anyone waiting. Normally we will begin with Srila Prabhupada chanting. Today we had to spend some time trying to get organized and make sure that everything is going well. This is our first endeavor. So please excuse if there are a few technical problems. They're bound to happen. Om Aginati Marandasya Ganagana Sulakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namne. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pasachadi Satarini. Welcome to each and every one of you on this very, very auspicious day to begin our program. In case some of you are forgetting, today is Vasanta Panchami. It is Saraswati Puja. The goddess of learning is blessing us today, who is none other than Lakshmi. It is also the appearance day of Sri Pundarik Vidyanidhi, Sri Raghunandana Thakur, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's disappearance, and the appearance of Sri Raghunath Das Goswami. It is the disappearance of Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur and the appearance of Srimati Vishnupriya, who is the wife of Lord Chaitanya. So a very, very auspicious day for a beginning. The kirtan you were listening to was, of course, Srila Prabhupada, and he was chanting the beautiful prayers that are at the beginning of the Bhagavad-Gita, the introduction. So if you want, you can read them yourself and become inspired by their translation. The devotee always begins by offering obeisances to his spiritual master and to all of the acharyas, all of the spiritual masters that came before him, and all of the sadhus and saints. So as with every Bhagavad-Gita class, we're going to begin by reading a quote where Srila Prabhupada is inspiring us to read his books. For so many years, devotees in the beginning of the movement were distributing Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada found out one day that one devotee who was doing this book distribution wasn't reading Prabhupada's books. And Prabhupada said, "You're distributing books, but you're not reading them? Read my books." So we're going to inspire each other and ourselves by hearing every day a quote. This one is from Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers. It was a series of conversations between Srila Prabhupada and Bob Cohen, who was at the time a Peace Corps volunteer. So Prabhupada is saying, so to get knowledge is the first item for anyone who is hoping to find the perfection of his life. Therefore, I advise you to read our books daily, as far as possible, and try to understand the subject matter from different angles of vision by discussing it frequently with the devotees of the New York Temple. He was from New York. In this way, you will gradually become convinced, and by your sincere and devotional service, you will make progress. So, Very, very important to always remember to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and as he instructed Bob Cohen, we should discuss Prabhupada's books, which is what we're doing today. So in case the audience is quite varied, some of you know more about Krishna consciousness than others, so I'm going to begin with the basics. His Divine Grace, Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada is the author of this Bhagavad-Gita as it is that we're studying. He's also the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. His Divine Grace actually comes from an ancient, authentic spiritual tradition known as Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And he received instruction to teach consciousness of Krishna, the path of bhakti to the Western world, specifically in English, of course, the Western world, from his own spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He received actually this instruction on the very first meeting that Prabhupada had with his spiritual master in 1922. He was a young man. He was very enthusiastic to follow Gandhi. He was a follower of the Gandhi movement. And one day, one of his friends said, "Oh, you should come and hear this holy man speak." Srila Prabhupada had heard so many holy men speak. They would come and visit his house when he was a child. His father would invite them. And Prabhupada wrote that he wasn't always impressed with some of these holy men. But this time he decided, okay, I'll go with you. And it was a very, very auspicious and special meeting, because on that very first time that Srila Prabhupada met his spiritual master, he heard Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati speaking about bringing this consciousness of Krishna to the Western world. Now, Srila Prabhupada was a Gandhi follower, and he was convinced that unless India can be liberated from the influence of the British Raj, that there was no way that India could have any positive influence on any level in the rest of the world. So he expressed his doubt. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, these are not his exact words, but he basically told Srila Prabhupada that this spiritual legacy actually goes beyond and will never be held back by any political ideology. So there is no need to defeat the British Raj first. Srila Prabhupada thought about that, and he never forgot that instruction. In fact, many times after that, Prabhupada heard the same instruction. As a married man, he took that instruction to heart, and even though he couldn't be completely involved in the temple, he did start publishing the first Back to Godhead magazine. He financed it with his own, with his business. And he did this for quite some time, off and on, as much as he could. Later, when Srila Prabhupada took sannyas, this was in Delhi, he gave his first lecture in English. And practically everyone in the room spoke Hindi. But Srila Prabhupada gave his first lecture in English because this was the instruction that Bhaktisiddhanta had given him, and this was his guiding, this was what guided everything that he did. After he took sannyas, he understood that to go to the Western world, he can't go there and just speak, that he needs to bring books to back up what he's speaking. So he went to Vrindavan and he began to translate and give purports to Srimad Bhagavatam. And only when he had the first canto completely translated and published did he even think of going to the Western world. Prabhupada was so determined that he translated, wrote the purports, got the books printed, distributed them himself, got the donations in order to distribute more. He did it all himself. It wasn't easy. Finally, in 1965, Srila Prabhupada came to the United States with not a penny to his name. Historically, we always read that Prabhupada came to America with 40 rupees. But Radhanath Swami actually told my husband and I in 1965, when we were celebrating that year, that actually Prabhupada had nothing in his pocket. Because right before his boat left, his son was on the boat with him, Vrindavan Chandra. And Prabhupada had 40 rupees. And he said, what good is this going to do me? You take it. So he gave his 40 rupees to his son. So he came to America with nothing, just cases and cases of books and the conviction that following a spiritual master would bring success. And the rest is history. Here we are today, sitting together, even though we're not all sitting in a nice temple room. We are sitting together on this Zoom temple room. So Srila Prabhupada called this translation and purports of this Gita, he called it Bhagavad-Gita as it is. There are so many editions of the Gita. But the translation of any book has to be done very carefully to preserve the original essence of any book. We can all appreciate this. And there's actually three categories of translations. There's blind literal prose, where the person just translates word for word and doesn't give much importance to the meaning or whether the meaning of what he's translating will be understood. And then there's an overly poetic translation where it's very beautiful, but the meaning is practically not there because the person has focused only on beautiful poetic words. Then there's the translation where the person is faithful to translating the words as they are meant to be used. Words can have many meanings in the context of what is written. And to do this, one must actually have understood, or even better, realize the content of the book that the person is translating. One must have also a sufficient command of both languages. Srila Prabhupada fulfilled all these requirements. By the mercy of his father, he went to English school. He was a bona fide disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And he translated and commented by sharing his own realizations on the authority of his spiritual master and all other Vaishnava commentaries. So therefore, this Bhagavad Gita is neither a blind literal translation nor a poetical exaggeration. So the history, Bhagavad Gita has an amazing history. It actually has two histories. There's the immediate history of when Bhagavad Gita was spoken, what preceded the speaking of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And then there are the transcendental ancient origins of Bhagavad Gita. The immediate history, some of us are very familiar with it, but it's such a wonderful story that actually, personally, every time I hear it, I become inspired. So we'll talk about that right now. So Bhagavad-Gita is actually part of the Mahabharata. It's in the Bhishma Parva part of the Mahabharata. And it is the great epic family story of the dynasty of the Kurus and the Pandavas. Actually, the Pandavas were part of the Kuru dynasty, and it was only because of this great difficulty within the family that they are now known as the Pandavas and the Kurus. So the setting is, it's a battlefield dialogue just before the fratricidal war between the Kurus and the Pandavas. It was actually also a world war. The 100 sons of Dhritarashtra were led by Duryodhana, and they were against the 5 Pandavas, led by Yudhisthira. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, one of the Pandavas. Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita right before the battle was ready to begin. At this point, Arjuna, who was a Kshatriya, that we don't fully understand in this day and age what being a Kshatriya means. Kshatriya means honor. It means you don't run from the battlefield. Your whole life, you've trained for this moment of being on the battlefield. But at this point, Arjuna, he's ready to leave. He's ready to give up his duty. He dropped his bow and he said to Krishna, I am not fighting. I am not doing this. And he wasn't doing that because he was a coward. Arjuna was doing this with very valid moral reasons. So this is a very interesting fact. Why was this battle being fought? The history is actually a very complex family situation involving jealousy and desire for absolute rule at any cost. Over the years, the situation had become more and more intense. Dhritarashtra wanted his sons on the throne, not the Pandavas, who were actually rightfully supposed to be on the throne. Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, was a very dark personality. Today, we would say he was a person with no moral compass. All he was interested in was the fulfillment of his own desires at any cost. The Pandavas had survived murder attempts. They had been exiled for 13 years. Even when they came back from exile, they were not allowed to take even a few pieces of land to rule. So finally, it had come to the point where there was going to be a battle. And even at this point, just to make sure that everything was very fair, Lord Krishna offered to Duryodhana and Arjuna a choice. He said, either you can have my whole army of Narayanas. Imagine, they're all, I don't understand exactly, but they're all more or less expansions of Vishnu. So powerful, we can't even conceive. Or you can have me, Krishna. But I'm not going to fight. I'm just going to drive whoever's chariot I'm with. So that was the choice. Duryodhana, he got to choose first. He was so happy. Oh my goodness, what did he choose? He chose the army of Narayanas. He just jumped on it right away. And of course, actually, Arjuna was very happy because all he wanted was Krishna, even though Krishna said he wasn't going to fight. So Bhagavad Gita is spoken as Arjuna is standing with Krishna on his chariot on the vast battlefield of Kurukshetra. in the middle of both armies amassed on either side. He says, I can't fight. He drops his bow, and Krishna begins to speak Bhagavad-Gita. Krishna spoke Bhagavad-Gita for Arjuna, but he spoke Bhagavad-Gita for all of us who are on the battlefield of our daily battles with life, small and large. Even some Western philosophers appreciated Bhagavad-Gita 100 years ago. Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Thoreau wrote, in the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad-Gita, in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. So, this is, however, not the first time that the knowledge of Bhagavad-Gita was revealed. As Krishna says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna first spoke Bhagavad-Gita to Vivishwan, the sun god. This was, I can't even conceive of this, 124,400,000 years ago. Try explaining that to a historian. Vivishwan spoke it to Manu, the father of mankind. It's not by chance that Manu, the Vedic culture extends everywhere. Manu spoke Bhagavad-Gita to Ishwara, his son. Ishwara was the forefather of the Raghu dynasty, from whom appeared Lord Ram, whose name and fame permeate India and beyond. And then Krishna says the knowledge was lost. So 5,000 years ago, Krishna spoke again Bhagavad-Gita to Arjuna. This is one of the reasons that Krishna appeared. Krishna says, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice or descendant of Bharat and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Actually, Krishna more or less spoke Bhagavad-Gita again at the very end of his life. He spoke the Uddhava Gita, which is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you were to read the Uddhava Gita, you would see that basically Uddhava Gita is Bhagavad Gita. It's the same instructions are repeated in a slightly different way, maybe sometimes more elaborately, but the same instruction is given. And Krishna was considering that these instructions are so important that at the very end of when he was on this planet, he repeated those instructions to Uddhava. And now Srila Prabhupada is giving us the Bhagavad Gita as it is. There are so many translations of the Gita and commentaries, but for the most part, they are not presenting as it is, as Lord Krishna spoke to Vivishwan and as he spoke to Arjuna. We'll discuss this in detail a little bit later. So how do we approach the study of the Gita? This is obviously not an ordinary book, so we should know the best way to read and learn from the Gita. So every course you take will have some instructions on how you should be learning this particular subject matter. Some courses will tell you you're going to have to spend, it's going to take you hours. You're going to have to be very determined. You have to read every single book cover to cover. When you hear that from the professor, usually you sit there and you groan, oh my God, am I really going to have to do this? Another professor will say, don't think you're going to learn this information just by reading a book. You're going to have to go to the forest yourself and put what I'm telling you into practice. Or you're going to have to go into the workforce or the kitchen or wherever. So how to study Gita? Well, for one thing, Bhagavad-Gita was spoken on a battlefield. We don't have to join the army. We don't have to go onto a battlefield. We each actually have our own battles. So we're already here. If you completed your reading assignment, you'll actually have heard what I'm about to tell you, how to study Bhagavad-Gita, but we're going to go over it again. Bhagavad-Gita is not an academic exercise, and it's not a research paper for a PhD. That's not how you study Bhagavad-Gita. If we approach the study of Bhagavad-Gita with these methods, we'll not be able to benefit. The study will actually be very superficial. Why? Because no matter how learned or intelligent or rich or poor, whether you're a man or a woman, we are actually haunted by 4 human tendencies. We are sure to commit mistakes, even though we don't like to admit it. Ask my husband. I hate to admit when I make a mistake. We tend to be illusioned, even if we try our utmost to only see the truth of a situation. Have you ever been in a situation where you think you understand completely what's really going on, and then someone else comes along and tells you a whole different aspect of the situation, and you realize you didn't understand at all what was going on? So we have a tendency to be illusioned. We have a tendency to cheat, even if it's just tiny little bit. You see, from very childhood, we have that tendency to cheat. If you ask, there's been a fight between 2 children, and the parent will go, "Who started this? Was it you?" No, it wasn't me, it was him. And the other person is going, "No, it was him." So we have this tendency to cheat. And we have imperfect senses and an imperfect mind. We just don't see, we don't understand perfectly. Just as a basic evidence, if you speak to 20 people that were at the same event and you ask them to relate what they have seen, they will all relate it differently. One of the above 4 defects will factor in, and the wrong conclusion is very often reached. So what to do? How to study the Gita, this most essential of all studies. In spiritual life, the method of realization, of coming to knowledge, is actually deductive. We've all heard of deductive and inductive methods of acquiring knowledge. I looked up the definition actually, just to be sure I'm describing properly. A deductive approach involves the learners being given a general rule, which is then applied to specific examples and honed through practice exercise. In other words, it becomes realized, becomes understood by putting into practice what we've learned. An inductive approach involves the learners detecting or noticing patterns and working out a rule for themselves before they practice. So in this way, in inductive approach, the person is using their own experience and trying to arrive at the truth. And both methods have their place. In school, in college, in the workplace, the inductive method may be invaluable. But when it comes to spiritual life, the deductive method of learning is actually valued as far superior to the inductive method. This is described in most every scripture. So let us try to understand what that means. Krishna actually himself tells us how we can understand this most confidential knowledge, knowing which we will never have to take birth again. Krishna says, Saevayam mayatedya yoga prokta puratu bhakto shime sakacheti rahasyam hietad uttama. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So Krishna is saying, because you are my devotee and you are my friend, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Arjuna also lets us know how to study the Bhagavad-Gita. In chapter 2, text 7, Karpanya dosho pahatas vabhava prichamitam dharma samudacheta yastrayasyan nischitam bruhitan me shishyasteham sadimam tvam prapanam. Translation. Now I am confused about my duty, and I have lost all composure because of weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So we may not consider ourselves, I know that I'm not such an elevated level that I can consider myself Krishna's friend like Arjuna. I hope I'm not his enemy. And being a devotee, well, I'm practicing, I'm learning to be a devotee. So in that way, I do qualify to some extent to understand Gita. But Arjuna's position is key. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Have you ever been in a situation in your life where you're completely desperate, you're completely confused, nothing makes any sense, and everything you've known so far, you can't even apply to the situation because you're so confused? This was Arjuna's position. And actually, this is our position in the material world, even though sometimes we get some relief from that confusion. We're actually all in this very desperate situation. And when we're desperate like this is our mood. Please instruct me. Please tell me what to do. But still, this is a pretty tall order, as we would say in the West. And sometimes our initial reaction might be, for most of us, forget it. I can't do that. Or, how could I do that? Really? Me? I could be that surrendered? But even though we may feel or we may understand rightly that we're not on this very elevated position of surrender, we can't stop there. Arjuna didn't feel when he was on the battlefield telling Krishna, I'm not going to fight. He wasn't thinking, oh, I'm such an elevated soul. I'm Krishna's friend. No, he was completely confused and he felt useless and he just, forget it, I can't do this. But Arjuna didn't drop out. He didn't leave the battlefield. What did he do? He almost walked off, but he stayed on his chariot with Krishna long enough to hear what Krishna had to teach him. And then he put into practice what he heard. Even Lord Krishna told him, deliberate on this fully, then make your decision. Krishna wasn't expecting Arjuna to just accept everything blindly, like a stupid person who can't think. In modern society, deductive teaching or learning has often come to be equated to being brainwashed or not being able to decide for ourselves. But this is never encouraged in spiritual life. And Krishna did not encourage Arjuna to take this path. He said, deliberate on this fully, then make your decision. So if we were really on this on the highest platform of being completely surrendered to Krishna, we wouldn't need to learn the lessons of Bhagavad-Gita, but we would want to. Because when one really loves someone, we just want to associate and hear from them, no matter what they have to say. Even if they're repeating an instruction that we know, we value hearing the instruction again because we value that person. I remember when I was a little girl, my father is French Canadian, and my father was very fond of saying, in the days of my youth, he couldn't say TH at the end of the word. So he would say, in the days of my youth. And when my father would say that, we would all roll our eyes back and smile because we knew exactly what he would be talking about. But we loved him, so we were happy to hear it again. So a devotee is always happy to hear what Krishna has to say. A devotee never thinks, I know it. I've already read it. No, we don't know it. We're here in the material world. We're struggling with our senses, our mind, so we don't know it. So most of us are not completely surrendered. Some of us may be stubborn or doubting or not trusting. Some of us just may be very inquisitive. We just need to ask a lot of questions. That's okay. We don't begin a journey by being at the destination. And if we can't be the perfect disciple, as described by Krishna and Arjuna, then step by step we go for it. We can adopt this attitude to the extent that each of us can. All of us, none of us are perfect. We're all adopting this perfect attitude described by Krishna and Arjuna on a daily basis. Every day we do the best that we can to be the disciples that we should be. And it's good that we do it like that, because starting from a platform of reality and not from some imaginary sentimental platform we may enjoy thinking we are on is a much better point of departure. So in the 21st century language, we need to approach the study of Bhagavad Gita on the most basic level, not as a hostile critic, but rather as a cautious sympathizer, as unhampered as possible by our own academic or personal prejudices. Once we've done that, the first step has been taken. And we should also have a good dose of sincere eagerness, which is very effective in the realm of spiritual knowledge. In conclusion, our mood should be, whatever our motivation for studying Bhagavad Gita, it should be a mood of critical introspection. If a student is going to be critical, it must be of himself, not the teacher, especially in seeking spiritual knowledge. I'm not asking you not to be critical of me. I'm not really the teacher. I'm simply repeating what Srila Prabhupada has told me. But the idea is that we don't want to approach with a critical attitude. We hear so many times Srila Prabhupada in conversations with reporters. Some reporters are very, very critical. They're very, they are just demanding and trying to corner Prabhupada into not being able to answer a question. And you see, those reporters never get anywhere. And another reporter, he may not be a great devotee, that reporter is not even a devotee, but that another reporter will just have a different attitude. Instead of being critical and trying to corner, he's just willing to hear what the person has to say. So that's very important. And we must also have genuine philosophical inquisitiveness. We should be inquisitive, and it must be genuine, with a sincere desire to learn. Our attitude is so important. Have you ever seen a teenager with an attitude? You've heard that expression. And the teenager, the mother will say, "What did you say?" I said, "Yes, I'll do it." "How did you say that?" In other words, you may say, "Yes, I will do it." But if the attitude is completely negative, then immediately there's a problem. Srila Prabhupada actually told us it is our duty to ask questions. And Arjuna himself taught by example. If you read chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2 of Bhagavad-Gita, you'll see this one question after another being asked, one objection after another. Arjuna keeps saying, "But because of this, I can't fight. But because of this reason, I can't fight. And this reason, I can't fight." And his reasons were not foolish. They were valid. They were moral. They were very good reasons. But Krishna would not accept any of them. So questioning is our duty. So we're almost done, and it's time for questions. So in conclusion, I'm just going to go over the five main subjects of the Gita. We started with this instead of just starting to study the Gita chapter by chapter, because we thought that it was very important to get a perspective of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Because these five main subjects are not, some of them are discussed in particular chapters, but mostly they intertwine the whole Bhagavad Gita. So we should be aware of these five main subjects, because we're going to see them coming up over and over again. It also gives a person who has never studied Bhagavad Gita a chance to look at this chapter, that chapter, to kind of go through the whole book and become familiar. So the five subjects are Ishwara, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead; Jiva, the living entity, that's us; Prakriti, material energy; time. Krishna says, "Time I am, destroyer of worlds." Time is Krishna. Very important topic. And we're going to study the activities of the living entity, the Jiva, both in its conditioned state and the activities which liberate from material entanglement. And to conclude, I'll just read from the last purport of the last verse of Bhagavad Gita and the last paragraph. Prabhupada writes, "Although superficially the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, material nature, and time appear to be different, nothing is different from the Supreme. But the Supreme is always different from everything. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is that of inconceivably one and different. This system of philosophy constitutes perfect knowledge of the absolute truth. Although superficially the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, material nature, and time appear to be different, nothing is different from the Supreme. Bhagavad-Gita 1878, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So, if you have any questions or comments, please ask them, and I will, if it's a question, I'll endeavor to answer. Aaron, you have a question? No? Your face is coming up on my screen. That's what I'm asking you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's good to see you and meet you, though. Welcome.
So, Mataji,
Yes.
which is the fourth perspective you were telling? One is Ishwara, second is Bhagwan, third one is Jiva, fifth one is time. Which is fourth?
The fourth
Kala and karma.
one is there's 5 subjects. Ishwara is number 1. That's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jiva, the living entity, the study of our nature. Prakriti, the material energy. That's 3. Time. And number 5 is the activities of the jiva,
Karma.
of the living entity in its conditioned state, and those activities which liberate.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the 5 subject matters. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, I get to meet everybody.
Sorry, just a technical thing. You can
I
also
wish I could
view,
understand his question.
you can also view everyone if you want.
I can't hear
Can
you,
you hear
Governor,
me?
for some reason.
Never mind.
Thank you for introducing us with such a good perspective, which is very far from academic. I think you've really given us a very good start and very good beginning to take it from here. I think it's very. I think your perspective is really extremely good.
That's good. I'm glad I've been able to do that a little bit. Attitude, perspective is everything. It's very, very important. A person with a negative attitude or perspective can read Bhagavad-Gita and get nothing out of it. In fact, it may feed a very negative attitude. They will misunderstand it so much, they will actually become envious. But a person with a positive attitude, the effect will be completely different. I don't know if you've ever spoken to a group of people, but when you're speaking to a group of people, you can pick up, even if it's a small group, you can pick up when the group is generally positive. And it actually is very inspiring, both for the speaker and for everybody in the audience. But if there's a negative, challenging, trying to find some fault, then the whole thing devolves into a very painful exercise, and very little is learned.
True.
So it's good you picked up on that, Sanjeev. I would expect it from you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Haribol Rajdas.
Haribol. Very, very nice class. Actually, what I loved really is the story about Prabhupada that he gave 40 rupees to his son, because I went for the disciple course and I read so many books and so many things on YouTube. Nobody never tells you that.
Really?
Yes.
Well,
because
that's amazing, because I had heard that Prabhupada had 40 rupees in his pocket. And he did. When he got on the boat, he had 40 rupees. But when the boat left, he didn't even have that 40 rupees.
Yes, I didn't
This
knew
is
that.
the depths of, isn't that amazing?
I always tell my wife, I said, look at this person, look at Prabhupada, look at example. With 40 rupees, he went to America. Tomorrow morning, I have to change this statement. I'll say, no, he didn't have even 40 rupees. He waited empty-handed.
You can't even say that anymore. No. Isn't that wonderful? It's so inspiring.
That's beautiful, yes.
And me, I worry when I've been living in Mayapur a lot, and I worry when I go to Mayapur, if I don't have a few thousand rupees in my bag to pay for the taxi or pay for this or pay for that. And Srila Prabhupada has so much faith that he came to America of all places with nothing.
Yeah, he was
this very
he was
inspiring.
we can't express him in words. It's he's not expressible in our
That's
material
right.
words. We can't say anything. We just better keep our mouth shut and just sing glories of him. That's it.
I think it's because
That's
of
right.
the conviction. I think it's because of the conviction. You very well said that the rest is history. So it goes hand in hand with that. That when you create history, you have to have that sort of conviction and confidence.
Yes, you do. You're right. You're right. It was equivalent actually to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He dropped his bow and he was ready to give up. But by remembering Krishna, by accepting the instruction that Krishna gave him, he was able to pick up his bow and fight again. We have to remember that this was not an impersonal battlefield like we have nowadays, where the men will be in trenches and they'll be shooting at people they don't know and they don't even really see who they're shooting at. They just shoot into in that direction. Arjuna was seeing his teachers, his loved ones, his family, all these very respectable people. And Bhishma was like a grandfather to him. And he was going to have to fight with him. This is devastating. Imagine being in a battle where you're going to have to go and kill your own grandfather. I mean, it's inconceivable to be in that position. So the faith, and so the confidence that Arjuna had in Krishna is very much, Srila Prabhupada's confidence reminds me very much of that. Srila Prabhupada actually had 2 heart attacks when he was on the Jaladut on his way to America. And Krishna appeared to him during, I forget if it was a dream or I think Krishna appeared to him right after the heart attack, but Krishna appeared to him and said, don't worry, go forward, I am with you. Just do this. And Srila Prabhupada survived those heart attacks and moved on. Are there any more questions or comments?
Vishwadika, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
I
you
can hear
hear
you,
me?
Balakrishna. Yes.
Oh, okay. So can you speak a little bit about the small homework assignments that have to be done?
Yes.
That should be done, or
I
we
was just
encourage
going
people
to
to
speak
do?
about that. Right. So all of you have received an outline of the classes, and the outline of the classes has homework assignments. They're actually very simple. I'm not sure, we don't want to make life difficult for you, and we're not trying to, put you on the spot and challenge you in any big way. We want you to remember Krishna, and we want you to make sure that you read the material, what we're giving you. So they're very simple, and the most important part of the homework assignment, as far as I'm concerned, is not to fill in the blanks. The most important part of the homework assignment is that each of you, when you're reading, when you read something that strikes you in your heart, that resonates with you, or challenges you, what is Krishna? I can't do this. I don't understand this. Something that really strikes you, write it down with a small comment why this particular paragraph or sentence or even few words are important to you. So please do that. And part of the homework assignment, and it's not a homework assignment I can check on, but it's a homework assignment that will inspire you a great deal, is to listen to the lectures of Srila Prabhupada that are recommended to go with each class. They're very easy. Damodar Prabhu has made them very easy to access. You go to Introduction to Bhakti, and you'll see at the bottom of that page, I think it's at the bottom, there's a picture of each book to be studied. And if you click on the picture of that book, it will open up and it will have all of the resources that you need, including the outline of classes and each of the lectures that go with the class.
Actually, if you don't,
it's right there.
actually, if you don't mind, I can take a second to show you.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Please.
Oh, never mind. I'll show you next week because I cannot share my screen here. I'll show you next week.
Okay. All right. So
We'll start
basically,
with that
they
Friday.
are there.
I mean, not next week, Friday. We'll start with that Friday.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. So please do spend some time listening to these lectures. And it need not be a time, if you don't have much time, and many of us don't, where you're just sitting doing that. You could be driving in your car, you could be washing the dishes, cooking, whatever. You can be, I personally listen to Srila Prabhupada classes when I'm cooking or doing the dishes. And it really, I forget that I'm cooking or doing the dishes. Oh, the dishes are done already? Oh my goodness. Because I'm listening to Srila Prabhupada speak. So please do that. You'll find it very inspiring. So for those of you that will be with us again on Friday, please don't forget Friday evening at 7 o'clock. Some of you will be taking the classes only on Tuesday. In that case, I will see you next Tuesday. Actually, Balakrishna Prabhu, I believe, is giving class next Tuesday, but I'll be listening in just to check up on him, just like he's listening to me.
I have a question. I have a
Go
question.
ahead.
Is that I am kind of at the moment committed for the class on Tuesday, and
Yes.
are these being also recorded for later, just in case any of them was to be missed, because it's going to be in sequence kind of a thing?
Let me answer that one.
Oh, the other classes, the Friday classes?
No, I mean like this one, for example, the one on Tuesday, or any other for that matter.
Yes, they will be in sequence.
Because we'll be in sequence, and if one of them gets missed due to any circumstances, will the recording be available?
Yes, the recording will be available the next
Damodar.
day.
Great.
Damodar will be doing the recordings.
Thank you.
And it will be available the next day. And I'm not a very good tech person, but I will ask Damodar tomorrow exactly how I can make them available. And I will send to each one of you an email explaining how you can access.
Yeah. Actually, we should have asked you consent on that, but all the meetings are recorded. So when you speak and your camera goes there, we'll see your face on the recording there. But so everything's recorded automatically. And then I post it on the Shaganagati Temple YouTube page. And it's going to be clearly labeled the date. And so I can send you the link right now in the chat, and we can send it to you by email also, the link of the YouTube channel. It's very simple. It's Shaganagji Temple YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Simple as that.
All right.
Okay, so Damodar, if you send me the link, tomorrow I can make sure that I send it to each student, just to, in case there's a confusion. Okay?
Damodar, it's Copy here. Is there a way, YouTube seems like a pretty public way of sharing it. Is it possible to do it just through email, to keep this link and then send it to our email list?
Yeah, I guess we can speak of, I'll figure out something. Yeah, it is public, but I mean, who's gonna go on there? I mean, maybe there's a way I can do it that you just have access by email, even though it's on the channel. You can do that also. That even though it's on the YouTube channel, you can only have access of it if we give you the link through the email.
Okay, I thought it might be something like that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to associate with all of you. It's very inspiring for me to do this. Very inspiring for old ladies like myself to see so much enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness, and I look forward to doing this again. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Hare
end
Krishna.
the program now. Have a good week. I mean, and a good week, all of you. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Thank you.
Haribo.
Good night. Oh, thank you.
Good night.
Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.